This does look like just a bunch of old stones. It's a lesser palace than Knossos. It's called Malia, but what I like about it is that Arthur Evans didn't do anything to it, so everything you see hasn't been tampered around with. I think it was subject to a massive earthquake or something. It was never rebuilt. This is the west side of it, when the facade would have been quite fine blocks. These are royal apartments. Like Knossos, it has these kind of ceremonial causeways. Some, of course, is new, restored, but the causeway would go. They're these kind of routes that you had to take before you entered the palace. So these funny round storagey things by the south entrance. Interestingly, Knossos has things like this, very similar, very close to its south entrance. Whereas at Knossos, I didn't notice it had a pillar in the middle. It is not known what they were for.
We're looking at a giant storage jar, which is probably almost 1 meter and 70 centimeters tall. They're called pitoi, and they find them everywhere around these ancient Minoan sites. They're basically storage jars. They're kind of like the Tetra Pak of the ancient world, if you like. They were used for a variety of things, including wine, grain, possibly olive oil. But just imagine the size of the ovens that could fire these huge pots, and quite incredible. What we're looking at, these rather beautifully carved solid blocks that would have presented the facade of the royal apartments of the palace, and we can see how fine they are even to this day. We can also see this rather beautiful processional staircase going up to the upper floors, which of course would probably have risen to 3 stories possibly. We're looking at a staircase here of the Palace of Malia, which would have led up into the stories above it, all gone now of course. But just the idea that this staircase is 3,500 years old is quite awe-inspiring. We're standing in the central courtyard of the Palace of Malia, which is not as rebuilt as Knossos, which was in a way manufactured by Evans, the man who excavated it at the beginning of the century. So what we have here is actually much more original, much more intact. We can see here this very odd stone. No one really knows much about it. This worked stone that stands in the middle of the court. But what this court actually does have is the only ever excavated and discovered altar for burnt offerings, which stands in the middle there like a sort of a pit. Possibly this courtyard was used for the wonderful acrobatic dances that the Minoans performed over racing bulls, which are one of the great mysteries of the ancient world, how they actually managed to do this. And much of their art revolves around this kind of acrobatic performance. Let's imagine that this is a courtyard where it could possibly have taken place with all the porticos intact and the people gathering around to watch. Here we're looking at the remains of the portico. It would have been a columned portico. We can actually see the bases of the columns are still there. These kind of round stones are in place, and also these rather curious holes there. It is said that these were used for posts to close off the portico, so that when they had the famous acrobatic bull performances, people were considered to be kept safe behind these palisades, if you like. And these I find absolutely fascinating. I've not seen anything quite like this before. These are the original floors of the east storerooms, and the floor is completely intact and actually shows the drainage system for whatever was kept here, perhaps wine or olive oil, some form of liquid. So if there was kind of a spillage, it would drain into the central gully, and then you see at the end of the gully some kind of ceramic drain in which the liquid was gathered.
So the Cretans hung out with the Egyptians, and this is a Cretan form of hieroglyph. And I think this clay bar represents some of the artisanal trades in this area just beyond the palace.